A popular teenager is walking down a Georgia street one early morning and suddenly disappears. Weeks go by, and there seems to be no sign of the boy. A gruesome discovery months later sends the case in a direction that would take over a dozen years to navigate. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 25 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. There is something magical about your late teens. Being in high school, enjoying life on so many different levels. The spontaneity each day brings, the irresponsibility, sleeping until noon on weekends, cigarettes and hanging out on the corner. If we could only, as adults, go back to our younger selves and make that naive person understand how precious that time of your life is and how much more we will appreciate it when it's gone. Blake Chappell's future self did not have to appear to the happy teenager and tell him much of anything. Because in 2011, at 17 years of age, Blake seems to be living his best life. And based on what family and friends have said, there is not a lot about squandering those precious years the older Blake could have told the younger Blake that he didn't already know. It's rare. I knew kids like this. I envied them, admired their zeal for life, and maybe the most important lesson they could have taught me, an unconscious longing they had for living in the moment, not thinking about their future, but enjoying the brief time you have as a teen. Blake does have a plan of sorts. He is interested in becoming a television news anchor, which kind of fits his jovial personality rather congenially. But what's more, Blake can even see himself as a lawyer one day. And his extroverted character is perfect for that job as well. Blake seems to be everywhere during that school year, 2011. On his dirt bike tearing up the trails, skateboarding with friends at the park, and hanging out with his large group of friends who call Blake easygoing and hilarious. A dude they all love to be around, a kid always willing to help someone and see the best inside of people. One touching thing about Blake I read, he loved Halloween. Even at the age of 16, he still dressed up as Winnie the Pooh, no less, and went out trick-or-treating. I think we can all relate to not wanting to let go of that part of childhood, which is perhaps what Blake's new girlfriend sees in him. How much he cares about people and the idea that life is all about what you make of it. During the fall of 2011, on October 16th, Blake and his girlfriend are preparing to head out to the homecoming dance at East Coweta High School in Noonan, Georgia. Blake and his girlfriend are hanging out at her house in Noonan on that late afternoon, excited for homecoming. Noonan is part of the Atlanta general metro area, but also the county seat of Coweta County. Noonan is modestly large, with about 45,000 residents, so it's industrious, and although the town still holds on to that southern charm in many ways, there is a lot going on. Blake has this style fitting to the times and the group he hangs around. He often wears a beanie or a baseball cap backwards. His bottom lip is pierced near both corners with curved silver barbells, his hair cut short, and he stands about 5 feet 8 inches tall, and he weighs about 120 pounds. The skater vibe, for sure. In all of the photos I looked at, Blake's infectious, charming temperament comes screaming through. You can tell by just looking at him that he is one of those very likable, fun kids who definitely enjoys and embraces being the center of attention. Blake's girlfriend lives in the Avondale Circle Parks of Olmsted subdivision area of Noonan, a beautiful suburban community. His girlfriend's mother drives them to a Japanese restaurant near 4:30 on homecoming day so the happy teens can have sushi together before the dance. The mother comes back to the restaurant and picks them up near 7 p.m. and drives them to the dance. Moms were the Uber drivers of the day, no doubt about it. When the teens get back from the dance, Blake calls his mother. He is extremely close to her. And she asks him how the dance went. "I had the best day of my life," he says. "Just awesome. I danced the night away." Blake and his mom had gone out in the days before the dance and picked out a new tie and slacks. He wanted to look his best that night. As they talk a bit more, Blake's mom agrees that Blake can stay at his other friend's house overnight, a kid who lives not too far from his girlfriend's, but she warns him, do not leave the house. Teens will be teens after all. "Okay, Mama," he says, "I love you. We'll call you tomorrow." Before hanging up, Blake tells his mother he is about to watch a movie with his girlfriend and that his girlfriend's mother will drop him off at his buddy's house after the movie. Near 11:30 p.m. on October 15th, 2011, Blake, his girlfriend, and her mother head out to Blake's friends. Blake has one of those early smartphones, so he is only able to text. But when he arrives at his friend's house, he uses the landline and calls his mother to let her know he just got there. "All is good. Sleep well. I will talk to you tomorrow." According to one report, Blake and his friend then head out the door and walk down to the corner gas station to buy cigarettes. It's what many of us did as teens. Shuffled around from one friend's to another, walked everywhere, and snuck out to get some cigarettes to smoke ourselves silly. I wouldn't change any of it. Even if that older self of mine came back to warn me how hard it was going to be to quit those things, which I ultimately did, I still wouldn't change it. The gas station is closed, however, so they hightail it back to his friend's house. It's now a bit after midnight. At 2 a.m., Blake texts his girlfriend. "I'm coming back over," he says. She says okay, and then goes back to sleep. If Blake is coming back, it will take him quite a while to walk what is 3 miles. Blake stays at his friend's house for about 3 to 4 more hours. Somewhere close to 3 a.m., Blake tells his friend, "I'm going over to my girlfriend's house now." Although I have not seen this in any of the research, my guess is Blake will spend a few hours over at his girlfriend's and then go back to his buddies before anyone in her house wakes up, and no adult will ever know what he did. He takes off from his friend's house and walks back to his girlfriend's. When he gets to his girlfriend's, Blake walks quietly over to her window and, totally old school, sneaks into her room through that window. It's about 4:30 a.m. by now. His arrival startles her, actually, she later says, because she had fallen back to sleep. When he showed up, Blake was really cold. He had only been wearing a t-shirt, no jacket. For a time, Blake and his girl hang out and talk about the awesome day and night they had together. "I love you," Blake says. "No matter what happens to me, I will always love you." At some point, they hear someone in the house who had just gotten up. It's his girlfriend's grandmother, who then catches Blake in her granddaughter's bedroom, even as Blake tries to hide underneath a blanket. Let's meet at 11 a.m., Blake tells his girlfriend, knowing, of course, he has to leave the house. Like a character in a John Cusack film from the 90s, Blake kisses his girlfriend and then heads back out the same window he came in as her grandmother heads off to get the girlfriend's mom to tell her what's going on. Blake then begins to walk back to his friend's house, where most of the adults in his life think he is. Upset at himself, feeling bad about what he'd done, Blake texts his girlfriend and tells her to explain to her mother how sorry he is. Every text he sends that early morning, the girlfriend later says, Blake adds an "I'm sorry" to it. So the kid is sincerely apologetic for breaking their trust. The girlfriend's mother, quite upset over the entire situation, calms down and realizes they're just teenagers being teenagers. So she texts Blake herself, letting him know he screwed up, but that everything will be okay. Stop worrying. It was a mistake. He apologized. They can all move on. Not long after that text, Blake texts his girlfriend and tells her that a police officer had just stopped him. The cop asked him for identification and wanted to know what he was doing and where he was going. And this is important, I think. Blake tells his girlfriend the cop stopped him near a bridge. It's 5:30 a.m. now. A few minutes after that text, Blake sends another, adding, "Damn, it's cold out here." Blake's girlfriend then falls back asleep as Blake seemingly makes his way back to his friend's house. Later on that morning, confusion turns to concern pretty quickly. Blake's friend says Blake never came back. Blake's girlfriend says he left about 5 or 5:15 a.m., and he should be there by now. The girlfriend and her mother and Blake's friend grow increasingly worried as each moment passes and nobody has heard from him. He is not answering texts. They get hold of Blake's mom, who begins calling friends and family, letting them know Blake is kinda, sorta missing. It's close to 11:15 a.m. now. Several of Blake's friends and family set out in the woods along the route he would have taken and begin searching for him. They find nothing. As they are searching, Blake's friend, the kid whose house he was sleeping over, sees a cop and flags the officer down. He explains what they are doing and why. The officer calls Blake's mother and tells her to file a missing person report. Law enforcement gets involved and interviews a gas station attendant near the area they are searching. She says Blake came by at 7:30 and asked when the station opened, then walked away in a direction the attendant wasn't sure of. Later, a report claims law enforcement did not believe the person the attendant spoke to was Blake. With what police see as clear signs of a runaway child, they deem Blake just that. Although I hate it when law enforcement makes this determination without any evidence, but seem to base it more on assumption, I don't think it hampers their investigation or search in any way in this case. But still, this is the thought process they are working under, so it has to affect their enthusiasm for finding him, whether they know it or not. If you go into a search under the premise of he'll show up somewhere, or he took off and will come back, it kind of takes away from the immediacy of the moment. And it's not difficult to go into all of these situations under the notion that nefarious activity is involved, which might fire you up a bit more to look where you might not look. Those who know Blake And even those who had last spoken to him, they don't think he ran away. But also, in the reports I have seen, say they are just not sure. They understand what police have to do, but the fact that they know Blake and the fact that he would never take off like that begins to cause even more concern. If he didn't run away, where in the hell could he be? There is only so much ground between the two houses to cover. If he didn't take off, or had help taking off, what happened? Remember when I mentioned that Blake texted his girlfriend about a cop stopping and checking his ID near a bridge? Law enforcement gets this information from Blake's girlfriend, and they check it out. No department or agency has a record of a cop stopping and speaking to Blake Chappell on that morning. Let's take our first break. I'll be back with more Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps in one moment. These cases involving kids who are just going about life, doing what they do, and evil seems to creep in and find them, really bother me. I have done several on Crossing the Line. Kids will be kids. They do things and make mistakes. That's part of being a teenager. It's the sadistic, psychotic scumbags of the world who prey on those vulnerabilities and take advantage of the mistakes kids make in life who truly need to feel the complete wrath of the law and the steel hand of justice. And many of these people, as we all well know, have been in and out of jail and prison long before they commit additional bad acts, but have been allowed second and third chances by our courts. Low Fayetteville Road in Somerville, Georgia, is the likely route law enforcement agrees later Blake Chappell took on his way back to his friend's house that early morning. This is an area of the town investigators later say Blake would have been unfamiliar with. Again, to summon my younger self, as I am sure many of you will agree, we all walk through neighborhoods we had never been in before. You kind of just find your way. As a teen, you manage to get from place to place the fastest way you can. And if it means cutting through yards or businesses or taking a route you don't know, you just do it. As that morning progresses, the search for Blake Chappell gets wider and more organized. Law enforcement is now beginning to float the possibility that perhaps he didn't run away, that something happened. But they are still not abandoning the idea that he could be a runaway. They have nothing else to go on but that scenario. Days go by. No word from Blake. No sign of Blake. His family is now beside themselves with fear and concern. His mother says he would never not tell them where he was or when he was coming home. Even if he was upset or pissed off, he would never worry any of them like this. Which only makes matters worse within the anxiety and worry brewing in all of their heads. Blake is here one day, gone the next, just like that. Every moment that goes by, that fear and anxiety grows. Law enforcement speak to Blake's girlfriend again, and she says she thinks he could have run away, but she has no idea why he would. Blake did have a court date coming up, so that is one reason why he might have taken off. But still, the girlfriend says, she and Blake discussed it, and he was not worried about going to court. Blake's mother begins to think the same. Maybe he did take off, perhaps he was more worried about going to court than he had shared with anyone. The court issue revolved around an ex-girlfriend and Blake. It happened where he used to live. There was some sort of confrontation with the girl's stepfather, and the girl apparently ran away from home and sought refuge in Blake. Blake was cited for interfering with custody, court records show. Blake was 17 then, the girl 16. He was considered an adult, she a minor. Because of a 12-month age gap and the law, Blake spent 16 days in jail not being able to raise the money to be bonded out. 16 days. For interfering with custody? Really? That is a crime bad enough to keep a child in jail for over 2 weeks? The court date to answer to all of it was coming up on October 24th. And in the end, the prosecutor had decided to go into court and drop the case because it was a ridiculous case to begin with. But Blake didn't have this information at the time he went missing. And the fact is, who truly knows what someone else is thinking? In that custody interfering case, Blake had actually tried to help the girl and was said to have encouraged her to go back home and not run away. For that, he was arrested and jailed. That court date comes around and Blake fails to show up. Nobody hears from Blake. No sightings of Blake. No indication whatsoever that Blake had run away. This goes on for almost 4 additional weeks. Then something happens. A large presence of law enforcement gather near a bridge on the Summer Grove Parkway on December 19th, 2011. They put up crime scene tape. There are cops everywhere. Everyone seems to be focused on the creek under the bridge. And I cannot help but to think back to what Blake's girlfriend had said about where that cop, which I am putting in quotes, stopped him. Soon, word spreads that a body has been found under the bridge, badly decomposed. Blake's mother told one reporter that she had gone out that day to the store and on her way home had taken the parkway. But when she got to a certain point, the road was blocked. The quote in that article from Blake's mother says it all. Something in my heart knew. Hours go by. Blake's mother is now at home, wondering, waiting, that sinking feeling persisting. She knows. Then her phone rings. Law enforcement wants to know what Blake was wearing at the time he went missing. Information, I think, they should have had already. And this is all she needs to hear to confirm what her heart has been telling her all day. I'll be right back with the conclusion. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. I have sat with murder victims' families for the past quarter century and listened to them describe these moments. When that call comes in and your entire life not only changes forever in one instant, but is immediately thrust into a holding pattern, a chokehold. I have also heard that it's not this moment actually when you first hear the worst thing in life you will ever hear, that is the most devastating. It's every day after, when you are forced to live with that knowledge every minute of every day. Just 3 days before Christmas, December 22nd, 2011, police hold a press conference and announce what they know, but also keep certain pieces of evidence close to the vest. Blake Chappell was found face down in creek water under that bridge along the Parkway in Noonan, the creek running through the Summer Grove golf course. He was wearing a t-shirt and boxer shorts. He was murdered by a gunshot wound to the head. It was definitely not self-inflicted, police say immediately. And this is to ward off any speculation that Blake might have committed suicide. Blake's murder was the first homicide in the town of Noonan that year. And that is about all they share publicly. The area where Blake's body was found is in the same general area where he was last known to be. A $20,000 reward is offered for information. They then send officers out to do a complete search of the creek for evidence and to see if they can locate any of his other clothing. They search the area for days and days and find nothing. Those early days turn into years and years. These cases can be hard to generate evidence. Blake's body being so badly decomposed, any forensic evidence is likely washed away by the elements. With no CCTV, no witnesses, where does that leave you? You need information coming in. Blake's mom tells reporters, "My only wish is that whoever did this, they ask God's forgiveness and repent. That's what Blake would have wanted. And I have to try and forgive these people and move on. But it's so hard. Sometimes I just feel like my life is over." A decade goes by. There seems to be no new information about Blake's murder. His family and friends have all grown and moved and have different lives. But Blake is never far from their thoughts, of course. There's that nagging pull in the back of your mind. Something might remind you of him, or you might see that a cold case has been resolved. And you wonder, will anyone ever be brought to justice for taking Blake's life? Then it happens. On September 12th, 2025, Noonan police call a press conference. They do not share how they developed the suspect or what led them to the guy, but a piece of garbage named Scotty Elliott Smith is the man who murdered Blake and, I believe, likely impersonated a cop and stopped Blake that night. 38-year-old Smith is a felon who had done time for criminal damage and criminal damage to government property, among other things. He had never been on radar for Blake's murder, but what police would only say was a new lead had led them to his doorstep, and what they found corroborated the facts they had. They interviewed Smith, and he confessed to the murder. He faces felony murder charges, in addition to a host of others related to Blake's murder. So far, no motive has been shared publicly. But look, you'd have to be ignorant or stupid to ignore what is an obvious motive Smith had for killing Blake. That's it for this week. Be safe, be aware. Sources for this episode include He Vanished After Homecoming Dance by Sean Noonan, People Magazine, 9/15/25. Arrest Made in Blake Chappell Case, Jeff Cullen-Dean, Noonan Times-Herald, 9/12/25. And there is a really great blog about this case. It's called Just Flip the Dog by a former newspaper reporter who did some excellent reporting on the case. The title of the story is The Death of Blake Chappell. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.